The courtroom in Ibadan was so silent you could hear the buzzing of a fly trapped against the high window. The judge, a stern-faced man with graying temples, placed his glasses on his nose and looked directly at the wealthy woman in the expensive bubu who was standing arrogantly before him. Mrs. Adunni Adebayo, his voice echoed, cold and final. This is not your kingdom. This is Nigeria. We have laws. And you, madam, have broken almost all of them. A collective gasp swept through the public gallery. The landlady, known as the Iron Rock of Akobo, stumbled back as if slapped, her gold jewelry suddenly looking cheap and heavy. Little did she know, this crushing defeat was just the beginning of her downfall. But how did a young tenant bring this mighty woman to her knees? To understand that, we must go back to where it started. Hi guys, this is Echoes from the Baobab Tress. Kindly subscribe to the channel, like and share our stories with your loved one. 6 months earlier, in the bustling city of Ibadan, in the neighborhood of Akobo, there was a compound neighbors pointed to with fearful whispers. It was a place where laughter died at the gate and tenants moved like shadows. The ruler of this kingdom was Mrs. Adunni Adebayo, a 55-year-old woman with a stare that could freeze boiling water. She owned the 10-room Face Me I Face You building and governed it with an iron fist. Her word was law, her anger a thunderstorm everyone feared. No visitors after 7 p.m. No generator after 9 p.m. No cooking of smelly fish. Her tenants, a tailor, teachers, market traders, endured it all. In a city where finding a good room was harder than finding water in the desert, her tyranny was a price many felt forced to pay. One of her longest tenants was Mr. Ton Okafor, a gentle taxi driver who had lived in room 5 for 10 years. He was a man of peace, always ready to help others. But disaster struck in March when area boys vandalized his taxi, his only means of feeding his family. All his savings vanished into repairs. So, when Mrs. Adunni came for his rent in April, his heart sank to his feet. More, please, he pleaded, his voice trembling with shame outside her parlor. Just 1 month. I beg you in the name of God. My children will not eat if I pay now. Mrs. Adunni's face hardened. Foolish man. Is it my problem? Your hunger cannot enter my pocket. Pay now or pack out. 2 days later, Mr. Tond, his wife, and their 3 children watched in tearful silence as area boys threw their belongings into the muddy street. The other tenants peeked through their curtains, their hearts breaking, but their mouths shut. Fear was a powerful jailer. A month later, a new tenant moved into the now empty room 5. Her name was Kemi. She was 26, from Benin City, with a smile as warm as sunrise and a backbone of solid steel. She worked as a nurse at the University College Hospital. She paid 1 year's rent, a huge 480,000 naira, and moved in with her simple boxes. Her grandmother's last words rang in her ears, "A tree that bends does not break, my child. But never let them uproot you." Kemi noticed the fear in the compound immediately. She saw how Mrs. Bola in room 1 hurried to turn off her generator. She heard the whispers when Mrs. Adunni's footsteps clacked across the courtyard. A cold feeling settled in Kemi's stomach. This was not a home, it was a prison. Mrs. Adunni's first attack came quickly. It was a Tuesday evening. Kemi had fixed a small, beautiful curtain to her window to keep out the harsh afternoon sun. "You!" Mrs. Adunni's voice cracked like a whip. "Who gave you permission to deface my window? Remove that dirty rag now." Kemi, her heart pounding, explained gently, "Ma, it's just a curtain. It protects my things from the sun." "Are you arguing with me?" the landlady roared, her eyes bulging. "Remove it or I will burn it myself." Kemi's hands shook with anger, but she remembered her grandmother's words. She bent. She took the curtain down. But that night, she started a secret notebook. She wrote down the date, the time, and the words Mrs. Adunni had used. The first seed of resistance had been planted. The tension grew slowly like a poisonous vine. Mrs. Adunni banned Kemi from having her boyfriend visit, calling him a rogue. She fined her 5,000 naira for accidentally leaving a light bulb on during the day. Each time, Kemi would nod, say a yes, more, and then write everything down in her notebook. She also began to talk softly to the other tenants. She shared sugar with Mrs. Bola. She helped Mr. Teyo's son with his homework. Slowly, quietly, she built a web of friendship within the compound walls. The other tenants started to look at her with a new feeling, a tiny, fragile spark of hope. The great explosion happened on a rainy Friday in July. Kemi had had a terrible day at the hospital. All she wanted was the comfort of her grandmother's recipe of pepper soup. The fragrant scent of spices, ziza leaves, and fish filled her room and drifted under her door. Suddenly, her door shook with violent banging. "Open this door. You witch! Are you trying to poison everyone with your juju soup?" Mrs. Adunni barged in, her face twisted in fury. She marched to the pot and, before Kemi could move, she grabbed it and threw the entire pot of soup out into the rainy courtyard. The pot shattered. The soup, Kemi's last comfort, streamed away in the muddy water. Kemi stood frozen, not from fear, but from a cold, solid rage that filled her entire body. "That is my food. You have no right," Kemi said, her voice dangerously low. Mrs. Adunni laughed a harsh, mocking laugh. "Right. You have no rights here. Pack your things and get out of my house." This was it. The moment to bend or break. Kemi looked the landlady straight in her eyes. "No," she said, clear and firm. "I am not packing out. My rent is paid. This is my home. And what you just did is wrong." The silence in the room was thicker than the soup's aroma had been. Mrs. Adunni was speechless. No one had ever said no to her. She pointed a trembling finger at Kemi. "You will regret this. You will see where power lies." She stormed out. Kemi's legs felt weak, but her spirit felt stronger than ever. The war had officially begun. The very next Monday, Mrs. Adunni called a compound meeting. She stood in the center of the courtyard, a queen addressing her subjects. "Good news," she announced, but her smile was cruel. "Because I am a caring landlady, I have installed a new water pump. So, from next month, rent will increase from 40,000 to 70,000 naira per room." A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the tenants. Old Mr. Teyo, the tailor, stood up on shaky legs. "Ma, this is too much. How can we survive?" Mrs. Adunni waved his words away like mosquitoes. "If you cannot survive, the road is wide." That's when Kemi stepped forward. Her heart was a festival drum in her chest, but her voice was steady. "This increase is illegal. The Lagos State Tenancy Law says you cannot just increase rent like that. We are not paying it." All eyes turned to her, wide with shock and admiration. Mrs. Adunni's face turned purple with rage. "Illegal? You are the illegal one here. Get out. Out," she screamed, spittle flying from her lips. Kemi didn't move. She simply pulled out her phone and started recording. "I am not leaving. And if you try to throw me out, I will use this in court." For the first time, the other tenants saw a flicker of something new on Mrs. Adunni's face, not just anger, but uncertainty. She turned and marched back to her room, her silence more terrifying than her shouts. That night, Kemi knew the battle was coming. She contacted a human rights lawyer she knew from the hospital. She organized her notes. She was ready. But Mrs. Adunni was not done fighting dirty. 2 nights later, as Kemi returned from night duty, she found her room lock broken and a precious notebook of evidence gone. And standing there with a smirk, flanked by 2 rough-looking men, was Mrs. Adunni. "Looking for this, you stupid girl," she hissed, waving the notebook. Now let's see how you fight with no weapons. Kemi's blood ran cold. Her only proof was gone. What would she do now? Kemi's heart stopped. Her notebook, her dates, her recordings, her proof, was clutched in the landlady's smug hand. The two area boys behind Mrs. Adunni cracked their knuckles, their smiles cruel in the dim courtyard light. Now you have nothing, Mrs. Adunni spat, tearing the pages slowly, letting the pieces fall like dirty snow. You are just a noise-making ant. By morning, you and your things will be on the street. A deep, cold terror threatened to drown Kemi. But then, from the darkness of room 1, a voice spoke up, trembling but clear. She is not alone. Mrs. Bola stepped out, holding up her own phone. I have been recording you too, Mo. For 2 years. Then, Mr. Teyo's door opened. And I have kept all my rent receipts and your abusive text, he said. One by one, doors creaked open. Every tenant, their faces lit by phone screens, stood in solidarity. Mrs. Adunni's smirk vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. The ant had an army. But would this army be strong enough to topple the giant? Let us rewind to the moment just after Kemi discovered her broken lock. The feeling of violation was a physical sickness. She sat on her bed, head in her hands, thinking all was lost. Her grandmother's voice seemed faint now. How do you fight without weapons? Just then, a soft tap came at her door. It was Mrs. Bola, the shy tailor's wife from room 1. She slipped in, her eyes wide with fear. I saw her do it, she whispered. I was too afraid to stop her. But I have this. She played a voice recording on her old phone. It was Mrs. Adunni's voice from 3 months prior, threatening to break Mrs. Bola's sewing machine if her son visited again. We are all tired, Kemi, Mrs. Bola said, tears in her eyes. If you are still fighting, we will fight with you. That night, hope was rekindled, not from a notebook, but from a shared burden of suffering. The next day, a secret meeting was held in Mr. Teyo's room, which was at the far end of the compound. All 9 other tenants were there, crammed together, speaking in hushed tones. Kemi's courage had become a spark that lit their own. They shared their stories. Mr. Teyo showed the court judgment from when Mrs. Adunni illegally seized his brother's property. Chidi, the electronics repairer, played a video of Mrs. Adunni confiscating his small generator. Each story was a piece of a terrible puzzle. They agreed they would pool evidence. They would all go to the lawyer together. The fear was still there, buzzing in the air, but it was now mixed with a new, powerful feeling, the strength of unity. Their lawyer, a young, fierce woman named Ms. Ifeoma, was amazed by the mountain of evidence. This is not just one illegal eviction, she said, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. This is a pattern of criminal harassment, intimidation, and exploitation. We will take her to court for all of you. The plan was set. They would wait for Mrs. Adunni to make her next move. They didn't have to wait long. A week later, official-looking eviction notices, filled with lies about property damage and threats to safety, were slipped under every door. This was exactly what Ms. Ifeoma needed. The notices were not legal. The game was now in the open. The day the bailiffs and police arrived with Mrs. Adunni was a day Akobo would never forget. She stood triumphantly as they approached Kemi's room. But instead of finding a frightened girl, they found Kemi, Ms. Ifeoma, and all the tenants standing calmly outside. Officers, Ms. Ifeoma said, her voice ringing with authority, my clients are pursuing a major civil and criminal case against this woman. Here is a court injunction filed this morning, barring any eviction pending the hearing. She handed the paper to the lead officer. Mrs. Adunni screamed, they are lying. They are criminals. But the officer read the paper, saw the stamp of the High Court, and shook his head. Sorry, madam. You cannot touch them. This is a matter for the court now. The look on Mrs. Adunni's face was priceless, a mixture of fury, confusion, and the first flicker of real fear. The weeks leading to the court dates were tense. Mrs. Adunni tried everything. She cut off the compound's water. Ms. Ifeoma got a court order to restore it. She hired thugs to loiter outside the gate. The tenants, now bored, filmed them and reported them to the police. The giant was thrashing, but the net of justice was tightening. Kemi became the coordinator, the encourager. She used her small savings to buy a big pot and would cook for everyone every Sunday. The compound, once a place of silence and dread, now hummed with low voices, shared meals, and strategic planning. They were no longer just tenants, they were a community, a family forged in fire. Finally, the court day arrived. The Ibadan High Court was packed. News had spread of the tenants taking on the Iron Rock. Mrs. Adunni arrived in a flamboyant osook, acting like a queen. But her confidence wavered when she saw her tenants, clean and determined, sitting together with their lawyer. The trial began. Ms. Ifeoma was a lioness. She presented the evidence, the torn notebook, the voice recordings, the illegal notices, the videos of harassment, the testimonies of the previous tenant, Mr. Tond, who was also present. She painted a picture of 12 years of systematic terror. Mrs. Adunni's lawyer could only sputter about property rights and disrespectful tenants. Then came the moment of truth. Mrs. Adunni took the stand. The judge, Justice Oyulade, a man known for no nonsense, asked her simple questions. Did you issue these eviction notices without a court order? It is my house, she retorted. Did you destroy a tenant's property, namely a pot of soup? She was poisoning the air. Do you have receipts for the water pump you cited for the rent increase? Mrs. Adunni faltered. She had no receipts. She had no permits. She had only her will. Justice Oyulade removed his glasses, his gaze turning icy. That was when he delivered those now famous words, "This is not your kingdom. This is Nigeria. We have laws, and you, madam, have broken almost all of them." The public gallery erupted. Mrs. Adunni sank into her chair, her kingdom crumbling around her. The judgment was devastating for the landlady. She was ordered to pay Kemi 8 million naira in damages, pay each of the other 9 tenants 2 million naira for psychological distress, revert all rents to the original rate for the next 5 years, and be placed on a government watch list as a predatory landlord. Furthermore, the property was to be managed by an independent agent until she completed mandatory legal training. Mrs. Adunni left the courtroom a broken woman, her wealth and reputation in ashes. The tenants hugged and cried tears of joy and relief. They had won. The Iron Rock had been shattered. One sunny afternoon, 3 months later, a celebration was in full swing in the Akobo Compound. Mr. Tond's family was back in their room, courtesy of the compensation. Mr. Teyo's sewing machine whirred happily. Music from Chidi's big speakers played Fuji tunes, and neighbors were invited to dance. The new property manager, a kindly man, had just fixed the leaking roof. Kemi sat on a bench, sipping zobo. Mrs. Bola joined her, placing a gentle hand on hers. "We owe you everything, Omo Alejo, child from afar. You gave us our voice back." Kemi smiled, looking at the vibrant, fearless community around her. "No, Mama Bola. You all had the voice. I just reminded you how to use it." That evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in orange and purple, the compound gate stood wide open, no longer a barrier to keep fear in, but an entrance to a new, free life. The story of Kemi and the Iron Rock teaches us that tyranny feeds on silence. But one brave voice, joined by others, can become a chorus that shakes the very foundations of injustice. And so, in Akobo, a new proverb was born: a single stone may break a pot, but united stones can break a mountain. Thanks for watching.